Hey, it's Kasim with Solutions 8, and something really interesting is happening that I want to share with you. This gets a little prognosticative, so forgive me for kind of going off the rails a little bit, but if you've been following along at all, you know that recently Google rolled out an update to its broad match um, approach that has actually worked way better than I expected it to. So Google every 3 months or whatever comes out and says try broad match, and then we say no, and when we try it, it fails miserably. Well, the last 6 weeks, just to recap, if you haven't watched our other videos, we've been testing broad match with smart bidding, and it's been insane how well it's working. And that pains me to say. It's not something I'm excited to tell you because it means that sooner or later I'm out of a job. But it is interesting just how effective it is. And I think we have it deployed for almost 20 clients right now. And for every single one of them, with one exception, it's been a near ubiquitous truth that it's improved campaign performance for our campaigns as well. Now, here's what's interesting about it. And this is what I want to talk to you about. We found anecdotally that we were getting all of these leads from Gmail. And that hasn't historically been true when we were running our normal, more traditional campaigns, especially because we appeal to a B2B audience. We were getting a lot of company domain-based emails, so like your name at company.com. But all of a sudden we switch over to broad match with smart bidding, and practically every single lead that we're getting from our paid advertising mechanism has come from a Gmail account. And what I think, and this is where it gets super dangerous, right? Because you're listening to some idiot that you don't know on the internet who thinks something. But what I think is happening is I think Google's smart bidding necessitates certain amounts of user data that forces kind of a pre-requirement of that user being a Google Ads user, a Gmail user. And it's we produce quite a bit of leads, as you can imagine. And this has been weeks of this. And it wasn't until this morning that my partner and I were going back and forth, like, what on earth? How is this possible? And so we both kind of came to this conclusion. And it's interesting because it lets you know where Google is fishing, and it gives you way more information about how and why smart bidding works. So if we're right, which is a huge if, by the way, this could be a coincidence, correlations and causation. I understand the statistician's model, but let's say that we're right. And if I was a betting man, I'd be leaning towards, I think that there's something to this, because all of a sudden we go from getting, a small, let's call it 10% of our leads have Gmail addresses, and then flash forward to we're testing this system. It's the only thing that we've changed, and now 90% of our leads come from Gmail addresses. So where it's an anecdotal data point, I do think that there's it's not something I'm willing to ignore. And if this is correct, what it means is smart bidding is relying very heavily on intrinsically qualified user data that lives outside of just search. And I think that's very powerful. And it also gives you a sense as to why Google's getting so restrictive with the information that it's allowing. With the removal of certain search terms, and then also with the products that it's rolling out, smart shopping, discovery ads, DSA. There's very little visibility in all of those, and I think the reason for that is because Google is drawing down so heavily upon the user acquired data, it can't give us that information without massive privacy violations. So, but it also makes me think that, gosh, that feels really limiting. It feels really limiting that we're going to only have access to people that Google decides are qualified, but only within this ecosystem that they've identified. And I don't know what those guardrails are. I don't know what those bumpers are. So we're going to test both now, as you can imagine, and try to see if we can't run this test concurrently. It's not going to be a perfect split test for obvious reasons, because it's being run inside of the same account, but it will make it good enough just to see whether or not there's a change in lead quality. We have noticed a mild, not massive, but a mild decrease in lead quality for ourselves when using what we're effectively calling broadimation. However, we have some clients that are seeing a very significant uptick in lead quality. And I'd say that that's more often than not the truth. And so I think for us, it has something to do with the fact that we're in a B2B space that spans the spectrum in terms of user needs. So, and the reason I make that distinction is because we have clients that are in the B2B space. One in particular sells service level agreements for enterprise level organizations that are on certain types of hardware platforms. Well, their lead quality is great. And it is either as good or better than what they had prior to, and they're getting more leads. But I think the reason for that is because the only type of person that could even be remotely accessible to them is going to be intrinsically qualified. For us, the people that want to run Google Ads span the spectrum, from no money and then maybe even negative money all the way up to all the money. And so, capturing people inside of that window tends to not necessarily work for us wholesale, let's say. And some of our previous campaigns were a little bit more effective at producing higher lead quality. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that we got really good at keyword sculpting. And now that keyword sculpting with broad automation is out the window, we're more reliant on going towards the global pond. And so now that we're fishing in this larger pond, we are seeing more in the way of diluted leads, which is fine. There's something about it that I actually like. I really like talking to much smaller businesses because it gives me a sense as to where the market's going. Anytime you see that user-generated interest, I feel like that type of thing starts from the bottom and rises up in many cases. And so, there's some lead intelligence that's really important for us to have. But there is diluted lead quality, which I think is important to note. But I'd be interested in seeing anybody else who's running broad automation or honestly anything using Google Smart Bidding. I'd be interested to see if you notice a significant uptick in leads that come from very clear Google ecosystems and I guess everybody's coming from a Google ecosystem because you're advertising inside of Google. But what I mean is if you're noticing an uptick in leads that are clearly Google power users, let's say, and that's really the crux of this entire thing. It feels like when we weren't using broad automation, we were getting everybody using Google search. When we started using broad automation, we're only getting people that are very heavily ingrained inside of the entire Google ecosystem. And I don't know what that Venn diagram looks like. I don't know, if it's 50-50, 90-10, 80-20, whatever, I could speculate, but I'd be completely off. Like how many people that are using Google search are, as a percentage, deeply embedded inside of the Google ecosystem beyond that, using Gmail, Google Photos, Google Drive, apps, YouTube, whatever. And I think that has yet to be seen. But it is really interesting to me. And actually, I'm kind of exciting that we're able to identify where Google's fishing, because up until this point, it's just been a black box. The entire automated, marketing ecosystem has been a black box. And so starting to piece this together is getting, at a minimum, it just makes me feel smart, if I'm being honest. Anyway, that's all I got. I'm rambling, and I really appreciate you. Truly, honestly and truly. Thank you for watching. And thank you for your comments, by the way. We're getting more and more comments. I'm starting to engage. Some people are arguing with me, which I like. I think that's great. As long as you're not mean, or you don't say mean things about my hair. I've had one or two of those. But yeah, if you disagree with me, call me out. Let's have that conversation, respectfully, of course. I feel like if two people agree on everything, one of them is unnecessary. So for those of you that, have had alternative opinions, I appreciate you for being necessary. Keep those coming. Any questions, hit me in the comments. Thumbs up if you like the video. Subscribe if you want to see one every day. Otherwise, I'm going to see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.